Hi, and welcome back to Ronnie the Reader. Obviously, my name is Ronnie, and today we are going to be discussing Riley Sager, who is currently my favorite, I think, publishing author who is kind of consistently coming out with books each year. Riley Sager primarily writes mystery thriller books, and I have read them all up to this point, which I am filming and releasing this video in January of 2024. So he has, is it 7 books? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 books currently published, with an 8th coming later this year. So right now I'm going to be discussing his work just from Final Girls all the way through The Only One Left. Basically what I want to do with this video is just kind of concisely get all of my thoughts on each Riley Sager book in kind of one cohesive place, because I think it is kind of spread whatever throughout a couple of different places. So I just kind of want a one-stop video for his work up to this point. So I'm going to go through each book pretty quickly, just kind of giving like a little rundown synopsis of the basic premise of the book, and then kind of going over some keywords and some thoughts that I had. Let's go ahead and jump in. So his first book that we're going to start with is his first kind of major release that came out a couple of years ago, and that is going to be Final Girls. So this book follows the story of primarily this girl who survived the kind of attack of her and her group of friends. And so now there's a couple of different girls who have survived similar attacks. The book kind of kicks off from there when they are basically threatened. This book has very similar premise and vibes to the Final Girls support group by Grady Hendrix that came out a couple of years after this. And like I said, this is Riley Sager's first published work as Riley Sager, as kind of a mystery thriller like primary author. And I think overall that this book does a great job of introducing you into his writing style, into his characters, his world, the way he typically likes to do things. And overall this is more thrillery than mystery. There is kind of the mystery of like who attacked our main character and who did the slayings and the killings, and kind of finding out what's going on and like what is the truth, what really happened, obviously all of that. But this one is just much more action-packed and kind of slashery vibes. And I think it's a great starting point. When people ask me, like, where do you recommend starting with Riley Sager, I typically recommend Final Girls, even though I don't think it's his best work, and that does come later on in through, like, other novels. I think this is a great place to just get you introduced to him and see where he starts. His second book that was published is going to be The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager, and I think currently this might be my favorite Riley Sager. I don't know, it kind of oscillates all of the time. What I like most about The Last Time I Lied was really kind of the ending twist of this book. The primary premise of this book is that you are following a young woman who is going to work at a summer camp that she actually attended when she was a child, but her 3 bunkmates that she was with, which were kind of like the popular girls of the camp, actually ended up going missing that summer, and then the camp was shut down after that, and now it's being, revamped later on. And so you kind of find out what really happened that summer, what was our main character's involvement, kind of what are the reasons for this camp being brought back now. Is it just, hey, I want to do this, or is it more like nefarious reasons that you have going on? And like I said, the ending twist to this really just left me completely shocked. I listened to this as an audiobook, and it's actually the only Riley Sager book that I've listened the entirety of it as an audiobook. Every other one of his books I've actually read physically or listened to small portions of the audiobook while going through. Yeah, this one is a unique experience. Maybe the reason it sticks out in my mind kind of the most is because of that audiobook kind of way of consumption. But overall, I would say that this is currently my favorite Riley Sager. I think at the end of this video, I'll do like just a ranking in general of his books as they sit right now with me, but that could always change. But yeah, this one I also think you could start with if you want to skip the Final Girls, if you feel like it's not really a story for you and you want to get into more just a traditional mystery thriller. This is his most traditional mystery thriller book, in my opinion. All right, the next book we have, I think a lot of people say is their favorite Riley Sager, and that's going to be Lock Every Door. This one came out in 2019, I believe, and this follows the story of another young woman who is a little bit down on her luck, and she ends up responding to an ad to be this apartment sitter, in this kind of famous, like, run-down type gothic apartment building called the Bartholomew, I believe is what the apartment building's name is. And then basically mysterious things start to happen. She thinks that a woman goes missing that she met. And this book definitely gets dark. There are some heavy topics covered in it. It's definitely very, very thrilling. I would say if Lock Every Door, or excuse me, if The Last Time I Lied is traditional mystery thriller, this is getting more into horror mystery thriller before he kind of really goes like horror-y in his next book, which we'll discuss in a second. This one, like I said, a lot of people cite as their favorite, as peak Riley Sager, and I definitely think this is good. I would say currently this is probably my second favorite. Like, I can't really describe this book too much because I don't want to give anything away, because I also think that the kind of twists and turns that this book takes are really exciting, and it definitely kind of takes you a while to piece together what is happening. That is going to be Lock Every Door. Not too much to say about this one. I would not recommend starting here. I think this definitely works better as a Riley Sager book if you are more familiar with some of his other works first, either the ones that came before this one, or I would say immediately the next one that came after this one. But obviously that's just like a general suggestion. You can read the books in any order. None of them are like, you know, series or connect in any sort of way, but that's just kind of my personal opinion, and others are going to disagree. So, all right, and the next one, which I think is really like so much of a spiritual like successor in ways to Lock Every Door, is going to be Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. This one came out in summer of 2020, and this follows the story of a girl who grew up in this house with her mother and father, and basically her father wrote this really famous like horror gothic novel about this house supposedly being haunted that they lived in. If you want to read The Haunting of Hill House, the Netflix version, like novelized, like I would say that this is better to pick up than any novelizations of the original Shirley Jackson work. Like, when I was reading this, all I kept thinking is like, oh my god, this is so much like Haunting of Hill House. And that's not a bad thing. Both the show is great, I think the book is good, but I think because I had already watched that show and had that kind of knowledge, like I could never get that out of my mind. And so that's why this one never truly like really stuck with me. To be honest, this is probably the book that I remember the least about. I remember 3 scenes in this book. One as kind of like a horror-y scene, and then 2 scenes at the end where you kind of realize what's going on and get more in depth with like the mystery and kind of see everything connect. This one I also would not recommend starting with. I would recommend starting with books either later or before this, and then jump into this and Lock Every Door. None of his books connect, but I really feel like Lock Every Door and Home Before Dark really connect well as like a pair. Both of them are a lot more horror-y than just straight mystery thriller, and really kind of get into just like topics of family, of grief, of like lies and kind of deception, and like who were you trusting. But yeah, this one is still good. Obviously I like all of these books. They're all like 4 to 5 star ratings for me, except one, which we'll get to. But yeah, that is going to be Home Before Dark. The next one I would say is, I think, the consensus group of like the weakest Riley Sager. I definitely disagree with that. But the next one is going to be Survive the Night. This one came out in summer of 2021. And this one follows the story of a girl who is basically hitchhiking a ride from her college campus to her hometown, set in the 1990s. And people really dislike this book. I would say that this one is much more akin to Final Girls. It's much more of a straight, like, thrillery slasher with like it definitely leans, I think, more into the mysterious elements or of like what is going on than that Final Girls did. But much like Lock Every Door and Home Before Dark are connected, I feel like this and Final Girls are very, very connected. So basically the reason that people don't like this, I don't want to get into because it's a little spoilery, but is the reason that I really liked it. Like, the narrative framing device of this book kind of ends up being one of the main twists, and I really enjoyed that twist. I kind of saw it coming, and so I was reading the book from that lens, and it made the book very enjoyable for me to be reading that. It doesn't work for everyone. Like I said, I think this is the consensus group. If you kind of polled 100 people who have read all of Riley Sager's work, I think most people would label this one as their least favorite. And some people label it as actively bad or not good. I definitely disagree. I think all of his works are good, as I've said, but I can see why people are not as high on this one. I did give it 5 stars. I really liked it. I really enjoyed the ride of it. But I would say that this one is not for everyone, so I would also not recommend starting here for his works. I would, definitely wait till you've maybe read a couple to get to this one. Maybe this be your second or third Riley Sager that you pick up, would be my primary recommendation. The next one we have is definitely maybe the most, maybe divisive would be the best way to describe this book, and that's going to be The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. Obviously, all of the books are by Riley Sager. This book follows a woman who has gone through some tragedies recently, and so she is now staying at this lake house that I think her family owns. I think it's a family-owned lake house, and she kind of starts becoming more obsessed with the couple who has just moved into the house across from her on the lake, and kind of starts getting tied up with them and their business, essentially. Because of the twist, I don't want to give it away, but this one has a really crazy twist to it, and I don't really don't want to spoil it, but it didn't work for me. I was not a fan. This was a 2-star rating for me when I read this book. I really didn't like it. I definitely plan to revisit his work. I think of all of the works that I've read by him, this one is the one that I would most want to revisit, just from the perspective of seeing where I sit now, knowing where the whole story goes, and kind of knowing from the beginning where our ending point is. But people really liked this when it came out. I would say that this book, as far as his other ones, connects maybe to The Last Time I Lied. They can make great tandem pieces. But this book, out of all of them, I think is the most outlier of him. I think it's the one that's written purposefully to be the most cliched book that he has come out with, maybe outside of Final Girls, which was his first work and foray into the genre, but that wasn't necessarily intentional, where I feel like the cliches in this were more intentional. So I would still recommend it if you're into a different kind of mystery. And people, I will say, if you want a twist where you're I don't know where this is going, I think that this will work for you. I think this has a really just out of their twist, completely out of left field. And that's ultimately why it didn't work for me, but that's why it works really well for other people. Finally, we have his most recent work, which I actually did a reading vlog for earlier last year in 2023 when it came out, and that's going to be the only one left. And this one is following the story of a caretaker who moves into this famous Gothic mansion where supposedly Lenora, the mistress of the mansion, the woman who lives there, was accused of murdering her mother and father in the 1940s or 50s, I think. And now you're kind of living there with this main narrator, this main caretaker, and kind of finding out what actually happened. And this one definitely is along the lines of Lock Every Door, Home Before Dark, more gothic, more horror-y. It's not as explicit horror as, especially Home Before Dark, but even Lock Every Door, it's a lot more gothic. In a way, now knowing what his next book is going to be, kind of does feel like a little bit of an end of an era of Riley Sager's work, and in a good way. This book was also 5 stars for me. I really enjoyed the way that the narrative was told and the narrative played out. There was some surprising twists and turns and reveals in this, so you definitely will stay entertained. Much like other works, though, I would not recommend starting here. My recommended starting points with Riley Sager, now that we're at the end of it, would be primarily, I would recommend starting with Final Girls. If you don't want to start there, I would say then the next 2 to start with would either be Survive the Night or The Last Time I Lied. And then I think you could jump into this one in any order that you wanted to read them if you did not want to read them in publication order, or others don't have interesting premises to you and you just want to skip around. I don't think with any of these you could start there, as I've said multiple times. It's not like it's going to ruin any of the other ones. Just as little recommendations for you. I will leave my reading blog linked above. It does have slight spoilers at certain points in it, but I do have a spoiler-free review for it at the very beginning if you would like to watch that. So now that we've gone through all of them, I'm going to just go through my ranking quickly of the books and kind of how I have them ranked currently, and then we'll just do a very quick little wrap up. So coming in last place, my least favorite Riley Sager, which again, I do enjoy them all, except for this one at times. I think looking back, I did enjoy it more than I originally thought, but it's going to be The House Across the Lake. Is going to be in 7th place for me. Coming in 6th place is actually going to be The Final Girls, his first work. I really like this, but it just, it's his first work, so that's kind of why this one's going to be 6th. Coming in 4th is going to be Home Before Dark. For me, like I said, just don't remember too much of this one. It's the one that's kind of least sticky in my mind. 4th place, I'm going to go with his latest release, The Only One Left. Again, good book, just I kind of enjoyed aspects of the other three, or the three above this one, a little bit more. Coming in at number 3, a controversial pick, and that's going to be Survive the Night. Again, the framing device, the narrative device of this book, I absolutely really loved and enjoyed reading the book through that lens, but it doesn't work for everyone. Number 2 is going to be Lock Every Door. I think the consensus best Riley Sager is my number 2, and I definitely think that this is good. It's entertaining, it's dark, it's gripping, it's mysterious, it's thrillery, it's everything that you want from a mystery thriller book. And then coming in at number 1 is going to be The Last Time I Lied. My favorite book, just the one that I had the most fun with, the one that really just left me completely shocked at the end, like, oh my gosh. And I think overall, maybe not his strongest work. Like, I think there are books that were maybe written a little bit better, but just for what everything culminated to, this is my number 1. So that is it. That is everything. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you have read any or all of Riley Sager's books, let me know what you think. If you've read them all, definitely feel free to give your ranking down below. I would absolutely love to see. I really like to see kind of the order that people put his books and what people like and don't like about certain ones versus other ones. So that is everything for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you again with one very, very soon.